So, I mean, I think it is really important. I mean, that's a very basic thing to do, but that's what I did, because it's about improving achievement. So if we're not improving achievement in our schools, that measure alone says that we have to inquire into whether it's working. And so I asked Lena, well, what sort of message do you want me to deliver today? What's important? She said, well, you know, we've been involved in this for a year and we need to know whether we're getting traction. Is this something that can be replicated across the region? Are we actually getting traction in our schools around raising achievement? And so, you know, this issue of urgency, you know, this sense of determination to get going with the work, and creating a sense of urgency is important within your schools, within your teams, to get focus, not getting stressed out and anxious, and not activity without productivity, but being very purposeful, having a very clear sense of what are we on about here together, that sense of shared purpose. How do we collaborate around the work? How do we coach for improvement? Action research, that inquiry loop. And so John Cotter, many of you will have probably heard of him from the Harvard Business School, and he's written this book and another one called Leading Change. And he looks at the types of things that are required, the 8 steps required for transforming your organisation. If you Google this, you can get this off the web. It is a really helpful framework. And he says he's done a lot of research into successful organisations, not-for-profits, corporate entities and so on. And he says that leaders often underestimate the need to have and to keep before people that sense of urgency. That you have to, at some stage, sit down and confront the difficult facts that exist within the organisation. If it's levels of poor performance, if it's inappropriate staff conduct, lack of professionalism, all of those sorts of things, the data itself, the data sets themselves, and to have that candid conversation about where are we now and how might we move forward together. You have to keep that loop going. So I suppose coming together today is symbolic in a sense to say we're in this together and this work is important, it is urgent, it makes a difference. Forming a powerful guiding coalition. How often in schools do reform efforts fall to the pioneering few? How often do I hear as I travel around from school to school, across schools as I've given presentations before, where teachers will come up to me and just say, look, if my principal was interested, that'd be terrific. You know. So, you know, the primary role of a principal is to be right at the heartland of school improvement. And if they're not present at every meeting, they should be giving executive authority to those that lead around them to make decisions. But they should be actively involved in those meetings, actively involved in classrooms and professional learning. These are things that are reasonable to expect from a learning leader. And it's really important that your coalition, your group, your school improvement group within your school is not isolated and it's large enough to have influence, that you're not isolated. So that guiding coalition, forming that guiding coalition fits in with this. The school improvement group is part of generating that coalition to support improvement. People mentioned before, having a clear sense of purpose, creating a vision for improvement. That's not about going through a lengthy and protracted discussion, but it's having a very clear conversation about what are our value commitments here. And then behaviourally, how are those value commitments expressed each day in the community? It's not about having a nice plaque inside the foyer of the school that as soon as you walk beyond the foyer you see that it's not enacted. It's actually trying to get an alignment between your espoused beliefs and your embodied actions. That's the fundamental credibility gap, is if what you espouse and what you enact is too great, people lose a sense of credibility. So you need to try and get as much alignment as you can. This next one is really, really important, I think, and it's one that I've had to learn over and over again as a principal involved in school improvement efforts in a number of schools, is that you need to communicate the vision and you need to keep communicating the vision. And Peter Senge, who wrote The Fifth Discipline, and looking at the fact that most organisations think that they're communicating and you need to do it 10 times more than you think you need to. Because the committee group that are committed and dedicated to the improvement effort, it's a long way out to other people within your school community, whether they be parents or other staff members in teams or to people who are resistant and disaffected about the work that's going on. So keep communicating what you're on about. I often find that in primary schools they're very good about making the learning visible. You know, you go into primary school classrooms and the artefacts of learning, the products of student work, are around the room. Secondary schools are often barren wastelands where students move like nomads from room to room without any sense of belonging. And yet often in primary staff rooms you'll see very clearly what they're working on so that people are reminded about the work. Do you have an AIZ display board? Do people know what you're on about? Do you communicate it verbally and bring it before people regularly? These are the sorts of things that are small instruments in continuing to bring people back to the sense of why we're committed to this, that sense of urgency.